Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today's Down and Dirty was a request by one of you guys, and this is going to be a pretty quick video today. We're going to talk about how to locate filters on different machines, and today we're going to use the skid steer because that's what I'm working with today. So let's flip around here and take a look. So let me lighten you up because we're going to need it. So the first thing, generally speaking, your fuel filters, your hydraulic filters aren't necessarily on bigger pieces of equipment going to be in the engine compartment tucked into holes and nooks and crannies like they are here. On excavators, generally speaking, your fuel filters and your hydraulic filters will be in a side compartment. Your oil filter, generally speaking, is going to be on the machine, or I'm sorry, on the engine itself, although there are some machines that actually have a remote oil filter. But for the most part, oil filters are going to be located on the engine. Now, because this is a skid steer and we've got everything tucked into little nooks and crannies, the oil filter on this guy, I believe, if I remember right, you have to undo those bolts and it's actually behind that panel. Now that's just because this is a skid steer and it's super tight. General rule of thumb when we're looking at filters here, most of the time your oil filter is going to be located kind of as part of the engine. It's gonna actually screw on to a part of the engine, generally towards the bottom. And the reason for that is because the oil gets picked up by the oil feed inside the crankcase. It goes through the oil filter and then cycles up through the engine. That's why it's generally at a low spot. Now, another general rule of thumb, you're gonna notice that filter kind of looks like that filter, other than the color difference. I automatically know, without even having to read the label on it, that this is hydraulic oil and that's fuel. Now, how do I know that? Look at the size of the line here going into the filter. That's a relatively small line. Now, look at the size. Let me see if I can lighten you up a little more. Look at the size of the line going in to that filter. You can see it right back there in the back. See if I can get it to focus on it. Notice the size of that line. That's hydraulic oil, because you have a lot more flow on hydraulics than you do on fuel. Now, there is generally on diesel engines a second fuel filter that we don't really call a fuel filter. It's your fuel water separator. Why do we have that? Well, diesel fuel, one of the drawbacks to diesel is it likes water. It will actually attract water. And so we have this guy down here. This is, let me darken you back down. Sorry, everybody. This is our fuel water separator. Generally speaking, the fuel water separator is going to be significantly smaller than our big fuel filter up there. And the other dead giveaway is this guy right here. You're going to notice there is a cable coming off of this. That is because there is a sensor inside of here. Let me back up here. Fuel is lighter than water, so water is heavier, which means water is going to settle down here to the bottom to the lowest point. That's how this whole thing works. This is actually a petcock here that you can twist. There we go. Now it's starting to loosen. And so I'm not going to do it all right now, but anyway, you will twist that sucker, and there's a little spout on the backside that you can't see here, and that's going to let the water come out. And you will let that run until it turns red, because what is red? Well, that's our off-road fuel if you're not familiar. Water is going to be clear because they're separated. Now, if you just got through running the machine, it might not be quite as good. You generally want to do this before you fire the machine up, because all of that water will have settled in this bottom little cup here. Now, going back to our electrical line that you see right here, why do we have that? There is a sensor in the bottom of this that will alert the computer in the machine if too much water builds up in this fuel water separator, and it will give you, and in fact the code on the skid steer screen is WIF, water in fuel, and that's going to let you know, hey, you need to open this up and you need to drain the water out, because if water makes it into the engine, what do we know about water? Well, first of all, it doesn't combust. Secondly, it doesn't compress, which means that if you get water inside the engine, it will blow your engine apart. It will actually cause your rods to bend on the engine because it does not give when the piston comes up to compress it. So that's a general overview of most of your filters on these machines. Outside of that, you've got little things like this guy here. You've got your def. That's going to be tucked away in different places, just depending on the machine. You've got your hydraulic oil fill. The best thing I will tell you is please read labels, because that looks really similar to that. This is diesel, That's hydraulic oil. I cannot tell you the number of times we have had people call into the dealership when I was working there because some jackass wasn't paying attention and put diesel fuel in the hydraulic oil, or similarly someone put hydraulic oil in the diesel fuel. So pay attention to your labels. So that is a general overview for, sorry, it's super bright. Let me darken you up a little bit and let me spin around so you can see my beautiful face. So that is a general overview of all of the filters on a machine. Now the last thing I will say, and this one better be obvious, right there, that huge mama right there is your air filter. That one's super obvious because look at the size of the pipe coming off of it. It's got a big old open hole right here so that it can suck air in. Oh, you guys can't even see that, can you? Boy, I'm a professional, aren't I? So anyway, this is your air filter. This whole half, or I should say this top part here, will slide off. You actually have an external filter, and then you've got an internal, like, smaller filter. That is what you're gonna blow out with an air compressor periodically until you no longer get a bunch of stuff out of it. And it's just totally gummed up, and then you're just gonna replace it. So, and use your operator's manual to figure out what your intervals are on all of that. But that's an overview of filters. Like I said, this is a skid steer. It's going to be very different than a loader or a dozer or an excavator. But general rule of thumb, your primary fuel filter is going to be fairly large. Your hydraulic oil filter is going to be really large. And then your fuel water separator is going to be a little bit smaller. It's going to be shorter, and it's going to have a little cup coming off the bottom. So there's an overview of your filter. So I hope this has been helpful as always. Comment down below, and we'll see you guys on the next Down and Dirty.